Good evening, Crime Talk aficionados. My name is Scott Reich, and this is Crime Talk. Thanks for joining us. It's our Tuesday night live program, and it's the first one we've done in a while, maybe 3 weeks or so, just because I had some travel commitments for work last week, and then there was a couple of other things, and things come up in life, so we haven't been able to do a live, but now we have. So it's going to be a good night. I can feel it. A lot of news to talk about. Wasn't able to do a regular show today, so I want to hit some of the news that we would have talked about before we get to our topic tonight, which is the Mickey Stines case there in Kentucky, where he shot his friend and judge. I think that's an interesting one, to say the least. We still don't have a lot of information as to why he may have done it. A lot of speculation, but no definitive answers. So maybe somebody out there in YouTube land has more definitive answers than I do. And if you do, let us know. But before we get to that, let's cover some other news that was in the of interest today as it relates to true crime issues. And one that really wasn't on the docket, but I think it was worth noting, is that Lori Vallow, remember her? Remember, killed a couple of people in Idaho? Her appeal is due in 2 days, on October 24th. The Idaho Supreme Court gave her attorneys their third extension, and that brief is due in 2 days. So it'll be interesting to see what they file and what issues they are claiming they're going to raise for Lori Vallow. In 2 days, we'll have to wait and see. Or will the attorneys file a last-minute motion for additional time in which to do that? Don't really know. We're going to have to all find out together. That is kind of the exciting thing about, crime, is sometimes we just have to wait and see. The anticipation, as I have to tell clients all the time when they ask, we're waiting for a verdict. Do you know what's going to happen? Do you know? I say, really? I hope I have a prediction. I hope it's right. I think, you're found guilty or you're going to win, but we're going to find out together. We all find out at the same time. It's kind of exciting stuff. Nobody has the inside scoop, so to speak. So let's go ahead and start the docket for today, October 22nd, and then we'll talk about the Mickey Stines case. First, the Delphi case, right? That's right. The bridge guy video was played in court today. Then we had Sarah Boone, her testimony. That's right. She testified today. I was here for a little bit, watched it with you all at the same time. I don't think she hit it out of the ballpark. I really, really don't. I think she hurt herself. I think that 8-year deal is looking better as time goes by. The Quinton Simon trial continues, and this day in legal history and our dumb criminal of the day, we have to bring it to you. So let's get to it. Delphi murder case. The prosecution played for the jury a portion of the infamous bridge guy video that was extracted from Libby's phone. Now, the 25-second clip showed Abby walking towards the end of the Monon High Bridge, with the teens then traversed the day they disappeared. Now, Libby, who crossed ahead of Abby, was recording with her phone, and walking behind Abby in the background is the man who became known as the bridge guy, dressed in a blue coat and blue jeans. Now, one of the girls was heard saying, "There's no path, so we have to go down here." Now, the showing at court today was the first time prosecutors revealed a portion of the video that shows the man who they allege is Richard Allen, following the girls, allegedly. Now, the police had previously released that zoomed-in clip from the video that did not show Abby for the public to see when they were trying to identify the suspect. And then in a motion on Sunday, Allen's attorneys sought to block the testimony as to the words and sounds allegedly contained on the video. Now, the judge did make a ruling on that request, but that portion of the footage played to the jurors did not show the teens interacting with the man. It did not show what happened after both girls crossed the bridge, including the part where the voice was heard saying "down the hill," or where Libby told Abby "gun." Now, the testimony in Allen's trials continued today with the admission of several dozen pieces of evidence, including swabs taken from the girls and clothes that were recovered from the crime scene. And it's kind of, methodical and time consuming to go through the collection of the evidence part of the trial. The highlight of today's testimony actually was a juror question. And the question was whether there was undergrowth on the ground where Abby was lying and appeared to have, whether it was had been disturbed. So suggesting that maybe she was dressed there. Abby was found fully clothed, but appeared to have been dressed in Libby's clothes. And the jurors asked the question in the form of a note that was given to the judge. Now, an Indiana State police officer, the crime scene investigator, also said that there was no indication that the area was in fact disturbed. Now, during cross-examination by the defense attorney, Bradley Rozzi asked the crime scene investigator whether he was not aware of any DNA evidence linking Allen to the crime scene. Rozzi asked whether there was any attempts to recover fingerprints from the sticks and branches that were strewn on the girl's body. And the investigator said the sticks were dirty and not a good source for fingerprints. Not to mention, you need to have, it has to be smooth, like glass, the smoother, the better. The more likely it's going to stick. If it's rough, not going to stick. Anyway, Rozzi, one of Allen's attorneys, asked if there was any signs that anybody climbed out of the creek near where the girls' bodies were found. And the investigator said there weren't. Rozzi also asked if a .40 caliber handgun is common. And that investigator said, well, actually, no. Now, prosecutors have alleged that an unspent round found between the girls' bodies had been cycled through the same Sig Sauer model P226, which is a .40 caliber handgun that coincidentally Richard Allen just happened to own. Now, at some point during this cross-examination, apparently Rozzi referred to the evidence as a magic bullet. The prosecutor objected, and the judge sustained the objection. Says your characterization, the judge said, was inappropriate. That's going to be a good one. I wish the judge, Francis C. Gull, had actually allowed video to broadcast or have video cameras in the courtroom to broadcast. Next, Sarah Boone. Remember Sarah Boone, the one that's accused of putting George, her boyfriend, in the suitcase, some sort of drunken game that they play, and she put him in there. Well, she testified today. Can't believe it took 8 attorneys and almost 4 years to get to trial for her to say this. This is all that they had. Let me walk it through, because I was here for it, and then I watched back in my office. I was trying to get some other things done, but I watched it with you all today that were tuning in. So the prosecutors rested their case early Tuesday morning in the case of Sarah Boone, and then obviously the defense has to put on their case. And as you don't know or not familiar with it, prosecutors allege that Ms. Boone zipped her boyfriend inside a suitcase during a drunken game of hide and seek at their Winter Park, Florida home, taunting him, and then she went to bed, leaving him to die inside the suitcase. Can you believe it? Who does that stuff? Maybe a couple of drunks. Anyway, Boone's defense team obviously didn't have a whole lot of time to prepare, as the judge had previously found that she had forfeited her right to counsel by her inability to get along with anybody as far as the previous 8 attorneys. But the new attorney came on near the end, and he wanted to present a battered spouse syndrome defense. Basically, it's self-defense. It's like a series of things over and over time, and therefore this all led up to it. So how did it really go? Not so well. So Sarah Boone got up and testified. The court made a probably very safe decision. The prosecution objected to this bad character evidence of George coming into evidence so that it basically to say this spousal defense. He was a drunkard. He was mean to her. He beat me. He hit me. All these bad things that Sarah Boone testified to. And I'm not saying they didn't happen, right? There's some good faith basis for it. But if the judge had denied allowing that evidence to come in, he faced reversal. So I don't think he really wanted to do it. Normally the 404B wasn't there, and the judge made a pretrial ruling outside the presence of the jury that there has to be some showing that this act actually occurred. The judge took a break. He said it did. And frankly, it works out well for everybody. Miss Boone gets her defense. If the jury rejects it, guess what? It's not an appellate issue on appeal. So the likelihood of any sort of conviction coming back, certainly getting reduced. Had the judge said, no, I'm not going to allow it, some appellate judge would look at it and say, well, there was a scintilla of evidence and judge, you should have allowed it. Therefore you didn't. And therefore, guess what? We have to do the case all over again. So you don't necessarily want to do that. So Sarah Boone got up and testified. The attorney tried to make her likable, which was very hard in my opinion. She's not a very likable person. Tried to, make her out to be kind of this good mom and, but she explained she was going through some problems through a divorce. And it was just a bad relationship, right? People going through bad situations, doing bad things together. It sounds like they're both a bunch of raging alcoholics. And somehow, that's right. Somehow, Sarah Boone managed to get Mr. Torres, the boyfriend, into the suitcase. And while he was inside the suitcase, he was saying, let me out. She testified that old George Torres was trying to get his hand out, and she was scared to death, scared. So then she took a bat and tried to poke at it to try and put him back in there because she was so scared of Mr. Torres. And then cross-examination came, and it wasn't a blistering cross-examination that I think the prosecutors could have really gone after, but they just kind of went through it methodically. And when he's crying for help, he's doing all these things. You never once let him out, did you? Nope. Because she was too scared. But then she went to bed. But then she called the police. She was drunk. Being drunk is not a defense, ladies and gentlemen. If it were, there would be no crime, because most crime is committed when people are impaired, oftentimes by drugs or alcohol. So voluntary intoxication, normally not a good defense, so to speak. Now she's going with, I was scared because he was so mean to me over the course of time. I don't know. We can talk about it as well today, but I don't think that she hit it out of the park, and not going good for her. Next, the Leilani Simon trial. The woman that killed their small infant child. So the jury in the murder trial of Leilani Simon heard in great detail the efforts that went into finding the remains of the 20-month-old child, Quinton Simon. Now, Leilani Simon is accused of murdering her toddler son back in 2022 and then putting his body in a dumpster. His remains were discovered more than a month later at a nearby landfill, followed by weeks of searching by law enforcement. Now, the FBI special agent who was supervising the coordination at the landfill, said that back on November 18th of 2022, when the suspected human remains were found in the landfill, that they were at the U.S. Attorney's Office, and she received word that they had found a skull. So she immediately returned to the landfill, and the special agent said that the mood was quite somber, but everyone was looking very, very carefully. And when they knew that they were looking for very small pieces of a very small child. Anyway, trash from as far away as Statesboro continued to come in and was being compacted in the search while all this searching was going on for the child. Anyway, a bulldozer was used for teams to pull away portions of the trash, and then teams combed through it looking for Quinton's remains. She said that they then used rakes, and you would rake through every little piece, she described, and you worked your way through all the trash until it had in fact been discarded behind you, because you looked through everything. Anyway, as the remains were found, they were brought back to an evidence tent, and they went through all that, compacted it into a place of arrest at that time. Anyway, their special agent said the remains were found over the equivalent of more than the length of a football field. You know why that happened, ladies and gentlemen, right? The little body, little remains, separated probably by those big dumpsters, the big land mover things. Anyway, they found pieces of the little toddler. Anyway, the jury the jury was allowed, but the people watching the trial weren't allowed to see the photos of the remains because apparently it's quite shocking. Anyway, they arranged for everything to go to the FBI lab in Quantico, Virginia, to confirm the identity of the young child, Quinton. Next, this day in legal history, on October 22nd, 1925, the Supreme Court began hearing the arguments in a case called Gitlow v. New York, a landmark case concerning free speech. The court upheld the conviction of Benjamin Gitlow, a socialist who was charged with criminal anarchy for distributing left-wing manifesto. However, the case was significant because the court ruled for the first time that First Amendment free speech protections applied to the states via the 14th Amendment, starting to incorporate many of the Bill of Rights protections into states' actions. So there you go. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, you did not have a lot of these rights applicable to all citizens and free speech, right? Not until 1925, applied to the states as well, not just to the federal government. Think about that. And then we had the case of Bell v. Maryland, 1964. The United States Supreme Court on October 22nd, 1964. That particular case involved 12 African-American students who were convicted for trespassing after participating in a peaceful sit-in in segregated restaurants in Baltimore. The Supreme Court vacated the convictions, marking an important victory in the civil rights movement and challenging segregation laws in public places. And then finally, our dumb criminal of the day. A Florida man is behind bars after being charged with spaghetti, a battery with spaghetti. Markel Royale and his wife were arguing Sunday evening about Mr. Royale's abuse of alcohol when a little dispute began. Can you imagine people involving alcohol? Anyway, Royal, who cops reportedly appeared to be intoxicated when they arrived, became irate and threw his bowl of spaghetti at his spouse of 9 years. The noodles struck the woman on the front of her body and on her stomach. That's an assault, ladies and gentlemen. Anyway, upon arriving at the pair's residence, officers found the victim covered in spaghetti sauce. Need I say more? Exhibit A as to the assault. Anyway, since Royal's lengthy criminal history includes a conviction for battering his wife, with whom he has 3 children, he was charged with an enhanced felony count. His bond was set at $15,000. Anyway, he remained locked up because he can't have any contact with his wife, who would probably be the one bonding him out of jail. Now, Mr. Royal's rap sheet spans 20 years and includes 10 cocaine possession convictions, as well as other drug and firearm charges, which he has served time in the state prison. Now, we'll give him the presumption of innocence, but I think that spaghetti evidence is going to be pretty powerful to the jury if it gets there. All right. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, you know the drill. Subscribe if you haven't, like if you do, leave me a comment below, hit that notification bell so that you receive notifications of when we go live or put up new content. And yes, please go to crimetalksearch.com. Sign up for that background subscription service today. So let's say, for example, you want to sign up for a background subscription service. Let's say you're really into true crime. Maybe you want to know a little bit more about somebody out there, like a case. Like, let's say, for example, hypothetically, you wanted to run a search of Shawn Mickey Stines. You could do it, and you could get his information. Now, I think we mentioned this before. Mickey Stines is probably one of the most boring people in the world. But, a background search is going to show, obviously, his general information, his contact information, all his possible email addresses, phone numbers, history addresses, relatives. That's right. You're going to get all that information, even possible neighbors in case you're trying to find him. jobs, education, possible usernames, social media that is associated with Mr. Stines, photos, properties, automobiles owned. Oh, most importantly, criminal records, ladies and gentlemen, criminal records. Are they on one of those public registries? That's right. Bankruptcies? Do they have judgments? Are they married? Everything you want to know. And literally, it's emailed to you as you wait, ladies and gentlemen. Emailed to you while you wait. And while you have that subscription, you can do as many as you want. Think about it. Think about how many hours you could go through all these cases, finding out all this information about people. Anyone coming into your life, check it out. CrimeTalkSearch.com. All right, there it is. Real, actual stuff. We use it. We use it here in my law firm as well. But that's just the way it is. All right, so let's move on. That's kind of the news of the day. Obviously, if there's a question that catches my eye or Frank notes, oh, looks like we got Mama Pink in the house as well. Welcome back, Mama Pink. So like I said, one thing I did notice as I was doing my show prep for this evening is that the Lori Vallow, and I mentioned this kind of earlier, but the Lori Vallow brief is due October 24th. And as I look at it, I confirm that it is the 22nd of October. So I'll be curious to see what motions, what issues are in the brief for Lori Vallow, where she is more than likely going to request a new trial or that the convictions be thrown out and a new trial be granted. We'll see. I would raise ineffective assistance of counsel, humbly, but we'll have to wait and see. And we'll have to wait and see. I'll be watching it for you over the next couple of days so that you don't have to see if they being the attorneys for Lori Vallow, file yet another extension. That was their third extension. Usually don't get more than 3, but it was a very complex case. But the actual record on appeal is quite small. But remember, on those type of cases, not only do you take up all the issues on appeal, you also try to perfect your claims for ineffective assistance of counsel so they can all be heard at one particular moment. All right. Now, let's talk about the case down there in Kentucky, the case of Shawn Mickey Stines, who most people have been following this stuff, was allegedly accused of killing a judge, right? And not just any judge, but his friend, Judge Kevin Mullins. Apparently, these two have been friends. They started out, I guess, as judge and bailiff, and prosecutor as bailiff in the same courtroom. And ultimately, Kevin Mullins became a judge. And ultimately, at some point, Shawn Mickey Stines becomes the elected sheriff. Now, remember, in most counties, ladies and gentlemen, you get out of the urban areas, like, here in Denver, just for example, we have a sheriff, but they have no real power. They don't even have arrest authority in the city and county of Denver. Their job is to, do civil service process, and they take care of the jail. That's really it. They don't even have arrest authority. If somebody commits a crime in the jail, the sheriff have to call the Denver police to come over and take the report. And then the police turn it over to the prosecution to see if they're going to file charges. So, but if you get outside of kind of a city, usually the sheriff is the most popular, most well-known, and most kind of respected guy in the area. There's always going to be people that don't like the sheriff. But I remember I had a case, I guess, can't believe it's already been like 5 years, 6 years, but it was a terrible double dead baby case, cult kind of stuff, religious stuff. And the sheriff down there, my God, nicest guy ever, right? Been the sheriff for like 40 years. Everybody knew him. He knew everybody in town, in the county. And, surprised when he walked in, they didn't all, go up and shake the sheriff's hand when he testified. And that's the way it is. When you get out there to the, rural communities, the sheriffs are the ones that really enforce the law. City police departments are usually quite small. Sheriff's got a lot of territory to cover, got a lot of stuff to do to make people happy. But remember, he is an elected official, so he has to, he's accountable to the people. It's not like a police chief just says, screw you, this is what I'm going to do. So anyway, Mickey Stines ultimately becomes the sheriff there. But there's been some information that comes out, and it's not like, a little more detail, I guess. We know that Sheriff Stines, a couple days prior to the shooting, had to give a deposition in regards to a civil case that was named the Sheriff's Department as a named defendant in the case. And the allegations are that a former deputy, a guy by the name of Ben Fields, basically took liberties with inmates in the judge's chambers. Now, that may be one of the reasons why we have video cameras in Judge Mullen's chambers right now, is because of this particular case. This deputy Ben Fields was apparently, doing inappropriate things with inmates in the judge's chambers. And the sheriff's office was sued in their not individual capacity, but as their capacity as the sheriff for failing to investigate a deputy who, like I said, was sexually abusing women in the judge's chambers. So the guy that conducted the deposition is a civil rights attorney, a guy by the name of Ned Pillersdorf, 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 for the record, and the court reporter. Anyway, people have interviewed him, and he asked, well, how, he's like, hey, the police have contacted me as well, and they were wondering if there was anything about this, anything you noticed about Sheriff Stein's demeanor in the deposition that you thought was unusual. And he described him, this Ned Pillersdorf, described the Sheriff Mickey Stines as being depressed and subdued. And, he said it was a deposition. So he was, probably cautious and chose his words, more carefully than if he was just, bantering at the local diner, so to speak. But he said, listen, when we talk about, sheriffs and things like that, usually these guys are quite gregarious. They're, get along with everybody. They could be the mayor, but no, they're the sheriff, right? And he just said that he was very subdued, tense, and not friendly like most people are normally in those things. Now, I get it. If you've ever taken a deposition, it's a weird feeling. You want to be nice, you want to be polite, but at the same point, you're trying to get information out of these guys. And in this particular case, the civil rights lawsuit is alleging the sheriff's office and the sheriff, in his official capacity, allowed this deputy to sexually abuse prisoners. That's wrong. You can't do that. He may take it quite personally. So I take this with a grain of salt, but in the reality of it is that there may be no connection to the shooting of Judge Mullins and the sheriff's behavior some 3 days before. As you know, we're still waiting to find out. We have a little bit of information. We have a lot of rumors. Now, I have asked people, I have given people Frank's email address, and I'm not hard to find. If you need to find me, we got emails everywhere. You can email me at scott@scottreich.com. You can find me at my law firm if you really needed to email me. I've said, if you have some information about what took place, because there's a lot of rumor and there's a lot of scuttlebutt going on, about was there something inappropriate taking place between the sheriff? Well, all right, let me take that back. Was there something inappropriate between Judge Mullins and the sheriff's family? Or was maybe the sheriff just a bad guy? Was the judge a good guy? We don't know yet. Really, the only people that truly know would be Stein's family. Apparently, the daughter's been interviewed. I'm sure the wife has been interviewed. Obviously, the sheriff, former sheriff, Deputy Sheriff knows, but he's not telling us. And his attorney seems to act like he doesn't know either. And like, we're still waiting to try to find out what was in the phone. So it is a very interesting thing, but clearly we know from the video that, there was perhaps some sort of argument that took place in the chambers, and the person that was at the lunch with the sheriff and the judge beforehand, said there was a comment like, do we need to take this back to the chambers and talk about it? So it gets a little weird indeed. But, like I said, the question is was this conduct 3 days before? I don't know. It could just be maybe the sheriff was just not having a good day. Like I said, if you ever had to go to a deposition, they're not fun, right? It could cost, in this case, the sheriff's department, the county, lots of money, because you can't have deputies go around sexually assaulting people. Their job is to serve and protect, not to do inappropriate things with them. So we just don't know quite yet, but I want to know what you all are thinking. What do you know? Like I said, I've asked people, if you know there's something weird going on, let me know. Now, I've had people, but I haven't been able to back it up, but some people are saying sheriff, bad guy. Some other people saying judge, bad guy. We're not accusing of anybody of anything. I'm just saying what some people have said. And I get it. It's a small town. The police that are investigating this case now are going to try to keep it as silent as possible, because I really don't see how this makes anybody look good, right? If the sheriff's a bad guy, and obviously the sheriff is accused of killing a judge, which is an aggravating factor, which one could, what's the word I'm looking for? Receive the death penalty. That was it. Sorry. It's an aggravating factor, right? To make it a capital offense there in Kentucky. The person was a judicial officer. We can't have somebody going around doing that. Karen of Texas wants to know, how can a deputy be able to use the judge's office? Well, my guess is the judge isn't there all the time. Now, I'm not sure why prisoners would be at the courthouse if the judge wasn't there. So like I said, was the judge, did he know something? Did he not know something? Was he giving this bailiff a little wink and a nod? Hey, hey, good luck, right? I hope not. I would hope the sheriff wouldn't do anything either. But let me tell you something, ladies and gentlemen. Over the years, I have represented several deputy sheriffs that have got themselves into some precarious situations. You would be surprised. People that are around people all day long, in a very closed environment, sometimes things can happen. Now, you see shows on television where things perhaps maybe get a little exaggerated. But I can speak of probably a handful of cases I can put on one hand that I personally know about, where there have been intimate relationships between sheriff staff or Department of Corrections staff and prisoners. It happens. How does it happen? Well, how long does all that kind of stuff usually take? Well, who knows? Not that long, right? And if somebody else is trying to help somebody out, maybe trying to hook somebody up doing a favor, they turn their eye, they walk down the hall so nobody sees know nothing about know nothing, right? That kind of stuff can happen. So not saying it's right, but Karen, Texas, that it happens. It can, in fact, happen. So yeah, like I said, the cameras placed in there after the allegations could be because of the allegations, possibly, because normally you would think a judge would want his privacy in his chambers and shouldn't need to be monitored other than maybe for security reasons, right? There's usually court cameras in all courtrooms, at least the ones that I've been to these days. But you would think the judge's chambers would be a little sacrosanct, and you wouldn't necessarily have to have them being monitored. Probably no sound is my guess, but technology these days, you can have a camera in every room and nobody would even know it, that can monitor the sound, and nobody would even know that it was being monitored. So I mean, I just think this is going to be an interesting case. Fortunately for us, the courts have already said, or allowed it to be live streamed. We were able to bring you the proceedings live when they took place. We were able to show the scene where the sheriff, Mickey Stines, shoots Judge Mullins multiple times, even as he cowers under his desk. But it really, really makes you wonder. You would really think, like, wouldn't Judge Stein's family want to make a statement? Now, the attorney for Stines has come out and said there was a heat of passion. It was heat of passion. Heat of passion is not a get out of jail free card. It just usually reduces the possible penalty. And heat of passion is something, I've read you the instructions. Let me see if I have the instructions handy that I went through in my stack of papers here that I keep close by in case I need them, right? Like the Shawn Diddy Combs indictment. We try to keep some of these things happy here. We've got, don't forget this, the Linda Stanley opinion. Never know when we may want to talk about this again. The 81-page opinion where Miss Stanley is going to get disbarred for the Barry Morphew case. Keep that handy here too. And if I had enough time during the day, or I could at least keep Frank here 24/7, I think I could go. The question would be, could Frank hang? Frank, the hardest working man in show business, could he hang with Scott? Scott used to work like a madman, Frank. Then we got, the Idaho notice here for Brian Kohberger for the things. Oh, we got the background search for Judge Mullins. Judge Mullins. Let's see. Lots of phone numbers. I mean, this guy is so boring. I guess I would say past tense. He was so boring. The emails that listed to him, ladies and gentlemen, he had a Gmail account and an AOL account. Just shows you how old he is. An AOL account. You don't see those very much anymore, but that's what comes up under him. Everybody lives in Kentucky, not far away from each other. I mean, nothing. This guy, so boring. That's probably why he became a judge. Doesn't even have social media from what we can tell. Properties. I mean, we're talking a couple of properties that are worth no more than $110,000. The guy was not living large. He was living just regular life, so to speak. Just in case we need it when it comes up, the indictment of Eric Adams. Never know when you're going to need to talk about that. I don't even remember who that was. Kiva Swander. Was that a dumb criminal we did a background search on, Frank? I think it was. Florida. It had to have been. Seems like that's where a lot of our dumb criminals come from, does it not? And then the Kohberger, we got it all here for you, ladies and gentlemen. We're always trying to stay up to date and have everything handy for you as well. All right. Enough about me. Let's talk about you all for a while. What questions do you have? All right. What are your thoughts? I mean, let's do a show of hands. All right. Who thinks the sheriff was the good guy in this situation? Raise your hands. Come on, for all those playing at home. Let me count them. All right. Hands down. All right. Now, who thinks the judge was the good guy in this situation? Now, understand the judge is now dead. Now, no matter what he did he really deserve to be killed? And the sheriff can't necessarily be, accuser, judge, and executioner all at the same time. And then to claim heat of passion. Like I said, the classic example I remember they give you in law school was heat of passion. Judge good. Both bad. I think there's more to the story. So undecided. Good. Thinking like a lawyer. Want more facts. Very, very good. That's right. Yes. Mickey knows more than what's been said. Yes, I think so too. I think there's something else going on. And here's the other thing, ladies and gentlemen. Now, I don't know. I'm just speaking from personal experience. I have no idea what goes down there at the Letcher, Letcher, Letcher County Courthouse in that county. But sometimes in these little small communities, things are very, very complicated, so to speak. Lots of backroom deals and things like that's going on. You think that'd be in the big city? My experience is that it takes a little too much in the small cities as well. But yes, Bo, thinking like a lawyer, too early to decide. We don't have all the facts yet. That's what I was hoping somebody that knew. There was a lady that commented one night. She knew this is what was going on down there. And I'm like, hey, man, it's one of my posts. I responded to the comment and I said, here's an email. Send it to me. If you want to come on air, you want to give me the facts. That's all we want. We want the truth. The truth, or a pretty darn close version of it, is going to come out. All right. So just tell us what it is. Okay. Moments in Trading. Voted for the judge, but I have no idea. I know. I saw the hands up out there. I did. And I said, hands down. And who thinks the judge was a good guy? Right. And here's the thing. I mean, at first blush, you're like, well, if the judge was doing something inappropriate with the sheriff's minor daughter, well, that's okay. But no, we can't really go around having the sheriff shoot people, right? That's kind of against the rule of law. Don't you think? Mama Pink, Scott says either or. He didn't give us a third option. I know. Third option. Maybe they're all something weird. Maybe it's some sort of swinger thing going on down there in old Letcher County. Things are getting a little crazy there in the sheriff chambers or in the judge's chambers, and the sheriff was involved. Or maybe he was upset they didn't, get invited. I don't know. Who knows? Who knows? We don't know. We're just totally speculating and saying that in jest. We're not accusing anybody of doing anything illegal down there. All right, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know. Gotta let me know what you think. Let's take a look at this. Too soon to say. All right. He's going to spend the rest of his life in jail, according to Danielle. I think so. Like I said, heat of passion doesn't give you a free pass. Now, let me give you my example of I've mentioned this before, but let me give you a much more clear example of heat of passion. All right. Have a client. True story, ladies and gentlemen. Let me get into my storytelling mode here. All right. True story. I represent this client. Let's just say he was a very, very large gentleman. All right. And he was black and he was from the South. He had met himself a very nice young lady. Let's just say she was very petite, and she was Hispanic in descendant, I guess, right? Anyway, girl invites guy over to meet mom. Mom, partaking of a few adult beverages, if you know what I mean, doesn't like new boyfriend of daughter. And let's just say there's a little argument. Mom, intoxicated, drops the N-bomb on my client. Now, he's from the South. He's old school. When you drop that particular N-word, it's not a term of endearment, right? You know what I'm talking about today. Everybody's, yo, what's up, my? Yeah, no. So what did he do? This man had huge hands. He just pop. Hits old mom in the nose, drunk mom in the nose, breaks the nose. You know how fragile all that little cartilage in your nose can be. You'll get over it, but breaks her nose. Needless to say, now she's really mad at the guy, picks up the phone and immediately calls the police. They charge my client with second-degree assault. He is looking at a mandatory minimum of 5 to 16 years in prison because he had this racial epithet thrown at him, and he responded in the heat of passion, right? Something that's so outrageous to your senses that you just almost can't react. It's almost just automatic. That is heat of passion, ladies and gentlemen. Now, I remember this trial very clearly because they brought in a prosecutor, a very, very fine prosecutor. And he talked about how his, I think it was his grandfather, there was Tuskegee Airmen and this and that. And the jury loved him. I love him. He was a great guy. He's a judge now, for goodness sakes. And, we kind of talk about it. We do voir dire. And I get up in my opening statement, lay out the facts, but instead of saying the N word, because I needed to add that dramatic effect, I said the whole word in my opening statement as to what the victim in the case said. And I knew it worked because half the jury was like, I almost can't believe you said that. Well, exactly. And that was what we were looking for, what I was looking for from the jury, to be offended. Look, you were offended when I said that. How do you expect him to feel when he said that? Right? And he responded in the heat of passion. Now, ultimately, he was convicted. It's not like we were saying he didn't punch her in the nose, but instead of 5 to 16 years in prison, it was now, 5 to 6, so it'd be 1 to 3, 2 to 6. 2 to 6 is what he got. So that's what heat of passion does. It usually reduces the penalty. It's not really it's an excuse, but it's not like a defense that's going to get you to walk out of the courtroom. So just remember that when we're talking about heat of passion type cases. Moments in trading. Did your client punch you after your opening? No. In fact, I cleared it with him and I explained to him what I was doing and why, and he was all for it. And even though we lost, we won afterwards. And he ultimately still did get some prison time out of it because it was still mandatory prison at that time. They've since changed the law, but it was just for a reduced amount of time. But I had to literally like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm going to say this. I can't believe I'm going to say this. But that was the point. The point was to say, ladies and gentlemen, you don't use that word. It's shocking to the conscience. And that's why my client punched her in the nose, right? Because, man, I just said it as to what she said. And I didn't even have to worry about somebody, I'm just repeating it. It's not like they were saying it with mean, like you're an blank, 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 right? But that's sometimes what you have to do. That's sometimes you have to do as a lawyer, say things that you don't necessarily like, do things you don't necessarily want to do, but you have to do it in the best interest of the client. And that was the best way in that particular case. And like I said, I think that is a very, very good example for people to put into perspective heat of passion. The example they always taught you in law school was, you come home and you come home early from the office and you find your spouse in bed with the next door neighbor, and there's a handgun on the nightstand, and you take care of both the wife and the neighbor. I did it. It was heat of passion. What would you have done? Right? So that's what it is. Let's see here. Let's take a look at this. A couple of these questions here. Sorry. The judge was way older. Let's see, 27, like 40. Let's see. Let me go back here. Sometimes I got to go back here. Age of consent is 16 in Kentucky with constraints. Must be within a 10-year age difference. That's the law in lots of states. 15, 14, anything under that, you're going to prison, right? The old 14, 14 will get you life kind of deal. That's what that means. Anything over 16 normally is kind of the age of consent. But if there's more than a 10 years age difference, because a guy could be 16, he's dating an 18 or 18-year-old or whatever, vice versa. I guess it can happen. But you start getting that 10 years age difference. Things are getting a little weird and creepy there, right? I'm sure it just gets weird the bigger the age difference like that. Let alone when they're younger like that. So we'll see. I mean, clearly, a judge, I think everybody who's married in this particular situation, nobody should be doing anything appropriate, right? Public servants are supposed to be doing it better and cleaner than everybody else. They're there to serve. And if you're going to be making the law and enforcing the law and executing the law, you need to do it better than cleaner than everybody else so that you are not a hypocrite, right? Now, we all know we're all hypocrites. It's just a matter of degree. But if you're a sheriff or a judge and you're committing alleged acts of misconduct, that's kind of the height of hypocrisy now, isn't it? We'll have to wait and see. Whirlybird 68. I don't think there was a sexual relationship. There may not have been. I've heard rumors, and I take it at that, rumors. We don't like to speculate, but I've heard there was, maybe the sheriff is not a good guy. Was the judge kind of a family friend trying to help maybe wife or kids get away? Who knows? Maybe there's a completely innocent reason why the judge, maybe they're friends. Maybe the sheriff's daughter was interested in going to law school and, sheriff gave him, we don't know. Maybe the sheriff gave the judge's daughter's number to call at some point. There could be a bazillion innocent reasons for that. We just don't know yet. We don't know. Now, I understand why Stein's attorney isn't bringing anything like that out at the preliminary hearing, because he doesn't want to give the prosecution more time to try to disprove it, right? You just have to give a general notice of defense at trial, like heat of passion, self-defense. You don't have to say how it all went down until you get to court. So I understand why they're trying to do it, but the attorney's blatant attempt to say, "Oh, this is a heat of passion case." Heat of passion. Why? Who is he speaking to? The court of public opinion, or maybe the grand jury? Saying, "Oh my gosh, this is our sheriff. He must have had something wrong to him. He's our sheriff. We voted for him. We elected him," just like the judge was elected as well. He was appointed and then reaffirmed by election. But, the point is, all these people voted for these people. They kept them in office. They knew them. They were held in high regard in their city. What were they trying to do? Oh, Sally just says there's an allegation groomed her for the last 3 to 4 years. I don't know where that information comes from, Sally, but I like the way you're thinking. We just don't know yet. But there's a lot of people out there that seem to know, but they won't tell me where their source is. Anyway, that would be good. Let's see here. Kentucky girls are just like grizzly bears. Oh, let's see. We'll just leave that one there. Let's see here. Let me go back up here and take a look at the questions here. Bad, good, and good. Real Aaron. Some people are going to start calling bad good and good bad. Yeah. Judge mentored Lila, the girl, for 3 to 4 years. Then why couldn't her father know what he wanted with her? I think the sheriff's own daughter denied an inappropriate relationship. Didn't that come out? Moments in Trading. I believe I may have seen something, but I haven't seen like official, I guess, so to speak, like a police officer saying, but I've heard a lot. Listen, I have been scouring the internet. All right. I think this is going to be a very, very interesting story. I want to know the details. I want to know the facts. And if there are no good facts to help Sheriff Stein, then he's got to face the consequences of his actions. But if the daughter, what is she going to say? Oh my gosh, you want to hear another crazy story, right? True story, right? Here, Moments in Trading. I think the sheriff's own daughter denied an inappropriate relationship. Okay. Let me tell you, true case, true story. I've completely forgotten the names to protect the innocent and the guilty. All right. Let me give you the general facts. You can't make this stuff up, but it shows you just because somebody says that didn't or did happen doesn't mean it really did or didn't happen. All right. People have a lot of reasons to not want the truth to come out if it's particularly embarrassing to them. True story, ladies and gentlemen. True story. I represented a young man. Let's say he's in his 20s. All right. He's in his early 20s. He just coincidentally happened to be a convicted sex offender. Now, most people would be like, ooh, I'm sure I want to hang around with my kids, right? Oh, no. Other people say, that is prime dating material right there, right? So 20-year-old meets 40-year-old, right? Meets 40-year-old female that has a couple of kids, girls. 40-year-old is going through a divorce with her 40-something-year-old husband, right? Needless to say, my client, 20-year-old and 40-year-old mom get together, spend more time together. She has her little boy toy. Anyway, they go on vacation. Okay. And they go on vacation, but basically they come back. And at some point, daughter of 40-year-old girl makes an allegation that my client, 20-year-old sex offender guy, attempted inappropriate things with daughter. Okay. Serious allegations, right? Here in the state of Colorado, look at you are looking at spending the rest of your life in prison. So needless to say, my client gets charged. That's how we meet. Girl makes allegation. Shortly after allegation, 40-year-old husband gets so mad and upset that wife was letting sex offender around his daughter and other kids. Dad goes over to the house and shoots mom in the living room, dead. So not good, right? Not good facts at all. So now 40-year-old mom is dead, may or may not have been helping to pay legal fees for a 20-year-old sex offender. Totally separate story. But dad gets charged with first-degree murder for killing his wife or ex-wife at the time. As we start getting to trial, of course, we're pushing. And then one day we show up for court, and guess what? District attorney says we're dismissing the case. I'm like, really? Why? What happened? What changed? Girl admitted she made up the allegations because she wanted mom and dad to get back together again. So my client, woohoo, we're number one. He's innocent. Guess what dad does back in his jail cell when he finds out what just took place? Hangs himself in the jail cell. True story. So this girl, trying to get her parents back together by getting boyfriend out through false allegations, basically orphaned herself and has no family. So I understand, sheriff's daughter says there may or may not be anything inappropriate. I don't know. We'll take her at her face value unless until otherwise. But the point is that you just never really know. You just really never know. And I always use that as that story. I think I've told it here before, but as an example of it can happen to anybody. I don't know. Sandy Smith, why did the sheriff shoot the judge? I don't know. Was he having a really bad day? Maybe irritated? I don't know. Maybe his coffee was too cold in the morning. Lunch wasn't good. Maybe the judge said something that pissed him off. Maybe the deposition of 3 days beforehand where the sheriff deputy, not the sheriff, but the sheriff's deputy is having sex with inmates in the judge's chambers. Maybe the sheriff heard something. But the thing that worries me the most is that the sheriff says they were trying to steal my family. Interesting. What does that mean? Were they trying to take him away? Were they trying to get away from the sheriff? I don't know. I'd like a little more context about that. Somebody wants to know, why wasn't the judge armed? Well, this may surprise you, but here, I'm going to go to this one. Why wasn't the judge armed, Sally? They don't have to be. They don't have to have weapons. Some judges do. I've known judges that have had firearms under those robes. Now, you would like to think that the courtroom is safe, right? Because everybody else has to go through the screening. Heck, we're now to the point in Denver when you go through the metal detectors, it's worse than TSA. You have to take your laptop or your iPad out. You have to have your keys out of your pocket. I mean, it's to the point now where we need like 3 bins just to go through security. You have to take your jacket off. And not just gentlemen, but ladies as well. But then you go to other jurisdictions, they're like, come on through, counselor. I was even in one county once where they didn't even have security. Not a metal detector. They just had a sheriff there with a big old gun. And he knew everybody, but he if you got a bad feeling from you, he'd engage in a little more security, so to speak. But small towns, they know everybody. They didn't need to. And if they don't know you, they can tell whether you're a good guy or a bad guy generally as to why you're there. So I don't know. I think this case is going to, let's see here. Questions. Stefan. Are we going to ignore the fact that the ex-sheriff Stines had a deputy that are convicted for being a sexual predator? No, we've talked about that. That the sheriff had his deposition taken for the deputy who was having sex in the judge's chambers, obviously before there were video cameras in there. It was a former deputy, Ben Fields, that was doing that, and he has actually been convicted of having inappropriate sex and with an inmate. That's a crime. You can't do it. They can't consent while they're in custody. There's too much of a power and control thing, so they can't do that. Bottom line is, why did the sheriff do it? Linda seems to know. Let's see. Sheriff's wife left him, and her daughter is actually the judge's biological daughter. But the sheriff has been her father for many years, and when arrested, said his family were being kidnapped. Ooh. I don't know if that's true, Linda, but I like the way you're thinking. Ooh. I'm going to admit I hadn't thought about that. Small town. Ooh, please. Let's see here. The side effects. The side effects of calling Mountain Dew a food group. That's kind of funny. Like I said, why isn't the judge armed? He doesn't need to be, but clearly the judge was. I bet the judge or the sheriff was, and I bet the judge, Judge Mullins, wishes he had a gun now. Yeah, Stephen, we are not ignoring any of those facts. We talked about former Deputy Brian Fields doing inappropriate things with inmates in the judge's chambers that got the sheriff's department sued, where the sheriff had to be deposed for failing to supervise and train. So the sheriff deputies, somehow it's the sheriff's fault that the sheriff deputy thought that he could have sex in the judge's chambers with inmates, young inmates. I don't think that, this is the world we've come to, right? Where the sheriff gets sued for the conduct of another, saying that he didn't properly advise the deputy, you can't have sex with the inmate in the judge's chambers. I guess we need to add that to the list of things on the employment indoctrination intake, just so they don't know it. Don't have sex with inmates in the judge's chambers. Ooh, new hire. I have a question. What about in the clerk's room? What about in the mop closet? Is that okay? No, never. But yet the sheriff gets sued for that. Yes, failure to supervise. I get it. It's a very litigious world, and that's just the way it is. All right. Can you believe it, ladies and gentlemen? We're almost there. What are we doing next? Well, it's Patreon time. That's right. We've got to go to our Patreon show. If you'd like to join us, we can go there in a couple minutes. We can still go through a couple more questions that you have here tonight. Let's see here. Okay, True Tech. A UPS driver today is guilty of the crime of tiptoeing to my door and placing an attempted delivery notice, but I was only on the 5th, 5 feet away from the door. There you go. Okay. And yeah. Let's see. Good point. If a civilian did what Sheriff Fields did, we would spend 20 to 30 years in prison. Sheriff Fields. I think we're talking about Sheriff Stines. Oh, yes. Fields. Yes. Okay. Sorry. Yes. If an everyday citizen had sex with somebody like that, well, it may not have been a crime if they actually weren't in custody, but having sex in the judge's office definitely prohibited. And if they were in a position of trust, that could be a problem as well. Yes. It could be even more, right? Like where I practice here in the great state of Colorado, it's an indeterminate life sentence, which means you could spend the rest of your life. You could get 10 years to the rest of your natural life in prison. And nobody could tell you when, if ever, you'd get out. It could be 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. It happens here. It's a very, very draconian thing. And it happens to people sometimes that maybe the law wasn't necessarily provided for. I'm not excusing it, just saying, because it's always somebody that says, well, it was just this and it wasn't that. And I get it, but it's the law. So you got to be careful with it. Anne, yes, this is the ridiculous. Anne says when she went through the security at the Denver courthouse, had to let them know have a mechanical heart valve, and it may set the metal detector off. And the people working it probably like, oh, we don't know. Would you like to place your heart in the basket, please, so we can scan it? I mean, don't get me wrong. I know the security people, they're doing their job. They're nice people. We actually had one get hurt not long ago because as you walk into the Denver City and County Denver courthouse, you go in, there's this very large atrium. And as you look up, there's 5 floors. And there's you can look over it because there's a big piece of artwork hanging there. Anyway, there was a guy in trial there maybe 2 months ago, maybe it's July. Maybe it's July. It was nice because I remember we were waiting inside and all of a sudden you couldn't get in the courthouse. What's going on? All the police came and they said they had a jumper. A guy that was on trial jumped like right as they were getting ready to do closing arguments, jumped from the 5th floor, dead, landed on a security guy and a machine or something like that. I'm not sure if he hit the floor exactly, but anyway, 5 floors would do that. So you got to be careful there too, Ann. So now you got to worry about, falling bodies. And I always wondered, that courthouse has been there now for at least 10 years or so, at least. And the first thing everybody wondered was, wow, how long it's going to take for somebody to fall off or get pushed off when there's a sentencing and somebody's not happy about it. Who's going to go push the other person off the edge? So it took about 10 years, but it ultimately did happen. It did happen. So be careful, Ann, when you're going through the security there. Let's see here. The lead detective was sketchy. He knew nothing about the facts, and he acted frightened to answer questions. It was so odd. Small town, ladies and gentlemen. Small town. Let's see here. It may have happened. Yeah. Tina, the last 20. I need another choice. Neither. So that must be in response to that question. Judge good guy or sheriff good guy? Maybe both bad guys? I don't know. Something weird? I don't know. Ted Bundy jumped out of the top floor of the Glenwood Springs Courthouse, a lovely place. Yes, it was actually the Pitkin County, I do believe. And if you go back and look at our archives, friend of mine, Chuck Leidner, he sat down early on years ago. Gosh, it's probably been at least 5 years now. He represented Ted Bundy, and we had a good conversation. And he was his attorney when he jumped out of the Pitkin County Courthouse, and I think he was on the lam for like 5 days. But then he turned himself in because it got a little cold up there in the mountains. Yes. All right. So let's go do our Patreon show. But those who haven't become a patron, listen, it's a much smaller, intimate group of people. We take your calls as well. And not only on top of that, we're going to send you all kinds of cool free stuff, right? Like an evidence guide. We're going to send you just really cool stuff. So when you're sitting there at home and you're watching these trials that we're bringing you, you're going to be able to see, hey, that is what Scott has talked about. That is 404B conduct. Objection 404. And even if it isn't 404, Your Honor, it is a 403 violation. And you got to know your rules of evidence, ladies and gentlemen. You got to know the rules of evidence. Why? Because as I had a judge explain it to a prosecutor just the other day, we don't do speaking objections because that is really a way to coach the witness. You use objection, relevance, objection, 404, 403, 608, Your Honor. And if they need to have a conversation, they do it outside the presence of the jury. But if you know the rules of evidence, you'll know what the heck was going on, ladies and gentlemen. So just a little bonus of being a Patreon member. And like I said, you'll get the secret link to come join us. And I think it's like $5 or something. It's not like I'm, running off to exotic locations on what we make in our Patreon money. Not at all. We got to pay the hardest working man in show business, Frank. All right. It's kind of weird, but I think maybe other than 1 month, I don't think we've ever made a profit on YouTube videos. Never. It's promoting things, ladies and gentlemen. That's where you make the real money. No one to tell you. We'll tell you all the inner work. We'll tell you all the deep, dark secrets, inner workings of a courtroom, prosecution, and defense. We'll tell you how YouTube works too, ladies and gentlemen. You don't make that much money on views. I assure you of that. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's all we have for you this evening. Thanks for joining us. Remember, go be a Patreon member. And yes, the Constitution matters. We'll see you next time.